Hi, I'm Gail, and an uplifter is somebody that makes me think in a new way, in an improved way.
Welcome to the Uplifters podcast, where we talk to inspiring women who, as I was just sharing with today's guest, are incredibly resourceful and creative at solving problems. We were talking about this because today's guest had to record outside because of some surprise construction in the house. But I actually think it's such a wonderful description of who uplifters are, because they are people who see problems and challenges in the world, and they are the ones who stand up and courageously, no matter how much fear they may have, stand up to address those problems. And our guest today is truly the epitome of that spirit. Someone I've followed for a long time. Her name is Alison, Mariella, Désir. She's the author of Running While Black, the TV host and producer of the award-winning show Out and Back with Alison, Mariella, Désir, which is so good. And even if you've cut the cord, you can watch it online. And she's also the host of Out and Back's companion podcast. She's the founder of Harlem Run, the co-founder and former chair of the Running Industry Diversity Coalition, the co-founder of Women of Color Take the Lead. And in 2023, she was named as one of the 45 most adventurous women of the past 45 years by Men's Journal, and one of the change makers of 2023 by Well and Good. In 2021 and 2022, she was named one of the power women by Women's Running magazine. She was also named one of the most influential African Americans aged 25 to 45 by the Route 100. She's designed a clothing collection with Oiselle, created the first ever satin-lined running cap made with Black women's hair needs in mind. She's currently sponsored by Brooks Running as part of the Run Happy team. She holds multiple degrees from Columbia. She sits on the board for Ann Mother, is part of the Athlete Alliance with Protect Our Winters, and is an athlete ambassador for Athlete Alley. And I've only just given you sort of the shortened version. So the fact that you found time in a schedule packed with all of that to talk to us just means so much, Alison. I'm really excited to meet you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. And to your point, I really have learned over this lifetime how to make things work, to not seek perfection, to seek what's good and what works. So I appreciate your flexibility also.
We're in this together. You've had a busy few years, and I can't even imagine what it's like for you to hear this list of accomplishments and accolades read over and over again. So what is the experience like for you when you hear that?
Yeah, I was laughing hearing it only because it makes me start to wonder, how do I find the time? But this morning, actually, so I'm planning for 2025, and my partner is amazing, and he knows the kind of person that I am, an uplifter. And so I wrote him a text message and I said, hey, I have a plan for 2025. And it's like things like climb Kilimanjaro, like host a retreat here. And he's like, oh my gosh, like I knew you were this person when we got married, but yeah, I have a lot of things I want to accomplish. And I set myself up with my network, with folks around me, family, people who are interested in supporting me to make it happen, right? Like truly none of it happens. None of the things I do happen alone. I am really good at getting people excited about things. So I end up co-founding and founding lots of things that don't exist or that are improvements on something that has existed, because I share what could be possible and really rally people around the idea.
I think of people like you as activators. And I think even like the creation of a plan for 2025 is an example of that. Because it's like, okay, here are my big rocks that I'm going to move. And then let's put all the pebbles around those rocks.
Right.
And it is people like you that are so well positioned for this sort of role. But when I read your book, I was struck by the fact that like, it sounded like you had played leadership roles in your life and as a student, as a young woman. And yet this was really the place where, as you say, you found your purpose in running.
in writing my book, it allowed me to reflect and really see patterns and themes in my life that weren't immediately obvious to myself, right? Like I knew that growing up, well, I had the nickname Powdered Feet, and I knew that I was more intense than all of my classmates, that I had a lot of energy, that people liked to be around me. But until I wrote my book, I didn't see this through line that I really have been the same person my whole life, that I've used really a wide array of talents and skills and interests. And I've brought those things together. And again, in writing my book, that's when I realized, like when I was younger, I thought that maybe that meant that I didn't have any focus and that I wouldn't be successful because I couldn't find a job because I didn't like one thing. I didn't know I wanted to be a lawyer or a doctor, an engineer or whatever. I liked art and I liked music and I liked movement and I like social justice. And I couldn't see a place where all of those things could come together. And I feel really lucky and privileged and fortunate in all of the things that I've found ways to bring those things together and recognize now as a parent that my son doesn't have to be, well, none of us has to be any one thing. we get this one life, and hopefully we're able to pursue as many interests as we can. And not all of that has to be paid or part of a formal economy. But that's, to me, what's really meaningful in my life.
I love that you said that. That's something I really struggled with too. I felt like I had no definition, or you talk a lot about fitting in and about a sense of belonging. And I can kind of relate to anyone and feel like, oh, that's interesting. Because like you, I'm enthusiastic and excited by different experiences. And so I really felt like that was a shortcoming for a lot of my life, and that I needed to like fit into some tidy box.
Especially because it's gendered, right? When I was as young as like third grade, I was called a social butterfly, which was not a good thing. And that I talked too much. I was always, getting in other people's business. And I realized that all of those qualities are what make me the amazing person that I love, that I'm a community organizer, that I'm concerned for people, that I'm like, if I see something that happening that I don't think is right, that I step in, right? But the way that those things are named in school systems or when people are young really can do harm to your future self.
Yeah, absolutely. It's creating limiting beliefs. And I think you have done something that really, I think if I were to look back on it, every single guest on this podcast has done, which has said, there is a community that is missing that I crave, and I'm going to build that around me.
Mm-hmm.
And the way you did it and the way you describe it in your book, I tried to replay the whole vision of it for my kids last night, because I think it's so inspiring and it's so important, because so often we say, oh, there's a missing piece, there's a need. And then maybe we muster up the courage to take a first step. And then if there's not people who see what we see right away, it's like, oh crap, I had the wrong idea.
Right.
I should go back and like suck it up and accept that that's not going to exist. So will you tell the story of starting Harlem Run Club?
Yes. And this experience was foundational for me, and it has shaped the way that I do things. So I started Harlem Run in November of 2013, and I was super excited. Back in the day, social media was like a very young thing. We could make flyers on social media, but there was no Canva. The flyers were terrible. But I put together some flyers for social media announcing the first run. I also made like physical postcards and I put them all around town. I had even started visiting other running clubs to let them know that I was starting this thing. And so I held the first run in November and nobody showed up, which I was like, okay, it's fine. Like the first run, like, maybe people will show up. But for 6 months worth of Mondays, I would show up at 6:30. I would wait until like 7:10. Nobody would come. And honestly, I had to learn, thanks to my mother and really my belief and understanding of how powerful movement was and how it had saved my life, how it could help save other people's lives. I had to remind myself that what I was doing was important and I was passionate about it. And that running is also an intimidating, scary thing. And so maybe there were people out there who wanted to join, but who hadn't yet developed the courage or wanted to know if I was serious about it or if they wouldn't be left behind, right? I had to make it not about me. I'm a terrible person. I'm lame. I'm not worth it. And keep showing up. And it blows my mind to this day because I've been living in Washington for 3 years. Harlem Run is turning 11 years old. And there were like 200 people this past Monday showing up at Harlem Run, separate of me. It has nothing to do with my identity, or most people don't even know me anymore at this point. But the community was built and the values continue to shape what that movement looks like. And it's thriving.
One of the things you said in there that really struck me is you said, I realize this is not about me. It's about the community that I'm trying to create. And yes, it was for you in large part, but it was also for these people that you envisioned creating greater access to running for and developing this sense of community. And I think so often where we get sidelined is in the fear of not enoughness, not cool, not right. And you talk about how there were all these messages from all these other clubs like, you're not cool. And you were like, we're not going for cool here. We're going for warm.
Right. I love that. And it was a big lesson on ego. Actually, initially the group was called Powdered Feet Run Club because my nickname is Powdered Feet, which describes somebody who's so active, you never see them, just the footprints of where they've been in powder. My father gave me that nickname. And I thought, wow, what a powerful name. And people will certainly understand the meaning of it. But that iteration was literally centering me. And I realized that nobody knew what that was. And nobody, as cool as I am, nobody was invested in me or just me, right? They were invested in this thing that was being built. That lesson continues to come up in my mind around, taking feedback from people, taking feedback about things that I've built or I'm working on. Like I have to remove my own pain or my own embarrassment or shame from what the feedback is, right? Like this person is telling me what they've experienced, and whether I agree or not, whether I like it or not, it is a truth.
You talk about coming to running on your own and how it saved your life. And I know it really was for you a way of pulling out of a serious depressive period in life. When Danae Dorame, I don't know if you know her, host of the Ground.
Of course, love her.
She's the best. When
Yes.
she was on this show, we talked a lot about burnout, and we talked a lot about how her love of running was really lost to the pressure of being an advocate and an ambassador for running for others, and all of the expectations then that were placed on her running. And so I was so curious as I read your book and as your running life became so central to your purpose, to your advocacy, to your family even, how it has impacted your relationship with this thing that saved you.
It's a really great question. So I will say that running after giving birth to my son looked very different than how it did before. And running was at one point my everything, right? It was the movement form that I connected to most. It was the thing that gave me community, family, mental health. And I would say that since having my son and also since moving to Washington, I found so many ways to move my body. And I say thankfully because one, running, maybe I can do it forever, knock on wood. But there are times when I don't want to run, or there are times, as you said, where I might feel that running can feel like something that is a lot of pressure, like I have to PR, and I felt that especially after giving birth to my son. I was looking at all these mommy bloggers and they were getting back in shape like 6 weeks postpartum. And I was like, what? Or even competitive athletes, elite athletes who go back and win medals, gold within a year of giving birth. Like I am so happy for them, but we can't tell complex stories about people. There's either like the exception or the other side of that. Anyway, tangent. But so moments where running has felt like too much for me, I now have such a wide variety of tools that I can tap into. And that includes walking, hiking, cycling, kayaking. And really what I find is what was so powerful for me about running was moving my body and being outside. And so long as I'm doing that, I feel the really positive impact in my life. So I'm running a marathon this year. I'm running every women's marathon in November. And then I'm attempting my first 100K race. And I realized that I am looking at running differently, right? Like even with the marathon that I'm running, I'm doing it because I'm going to be around 7,999 other women celebrating a variety of paces, shapes, bodies, etc. And I'm doing the 100K because I want to see how far I can go, how far my mind will let me go when my body is saying to quit.
It's like very specific goals and mindsets for each of these races and different intentions for what you want out of
Exactly.
them. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think that's so wise.
Thank you. I feel so lucky to be in a place where movement is not competition or movement is not validation. And not everybody gets that.
I mean, there is the competition piece. There's also the punishment piece. And there's all sorts of really complicated stuff around fitness, especially in running.
Mm-hmm.
And so to have these other intentions and to be so clear with yourself about what you want out of it and then about what you choose to pour your body and your heart into is really a powerful place to be.
I do relate a lot of it again to leaving New York, because I'll say that being in New York, no matter what industry you're in, there is so much pressure to be the best at that thing, to be doing it when others are sleeping, to be hustling nonstop. And part of my move was realizing that that energy was no longer serving me. It was exactly what I wanted and needed when I was younger. And I'm not saying this as some kind of like I'm more evolved because I'm older. I'm talking about my own personal experience. And now what I need is space where honestly people in Seattle are like the complete opposite. Like they're like, like that intensity is not there. And it just allows me to be more expansive, I think.
So when you started Harlem Runs, you started with this intention of creating more representation and diversity. And I know throughout your book, your understanding of where the need was and what really had been lost in the retelling of history expanded. Can you talk a little about that?
Absolutely. I have always been really into history because, I mean, there's so much you can learn from history. There are so many, for me, learning my personal family history and then learning the history of Haiti and Colombia, and which is not really taught in schools, allowed me to feel a sense of connection that often people of color, immigrants, feel a sense of disconnection when they're learning history because it's as if we don't exist, right? The story is always told from the story of those in power, those who make the rules, and the rest of us are sort of on the margins, seeming like victims. And the same is true in the history of running, right? There's one particular story that's told about running, and it starts with Bill Bowerman and Hayward Field and the creation of Nike and Steve Prefontaine. And that is one story, but that's not the only story and not the full story. And so I discovered almost accidentally Ted Corbett and the New York Pioneer Club. And without giving everything away, the New York Pioneer Club existed in the early 20th century, in I want to say 1930 something, I forget exactly now. And it was one of the first integrated running clubs in the country. It was integrated before baseball was integrated. And it was an opportunity for people like Ted Corbett, who's the father of long distance running, to really explore his talent and become one of the best. And stories like him, stories like Marilyn Bevins, who is alive and a contemporary of Catherine Switzer, like they raced each other. It's important that we're saying not just Catherine's name, who's a friend, love you, Catherine, if you're listening, but also Marilyn Bevins and also Ted Corbett, right? And what often happens is it seems as if it's like a zero-sum game. There's this one story. It's not either or. It's a comprehensive story. Like history is really all of our recollections and memories put in a narrative. And so in the book, I try to expand that narrative and show just how central Black people were to creating this sport. My hope is that the more Black people that know that, they will see themselves in this sport. They'll know that long distance running is for them and we helped create it.
That's so important. And there was so much, even, as somebody who's run in New York City for 25 years that I didn't know. I mean, I ran past Ted Corbett's statue for probably 15 years before I knew he was a Black man, right? He was just the little guy I ran past all the time, right? Like I knew nothing about him. I ran his race, but I didn't know how significant I knew he was a coach, but none of the facts were about his race or about his pioneering.
And that is, I have to say, New York Roadrunners and others are now taking accountability and responsibility for that failure, for saying his name, but not saying the significance and really giving the full story of why he matters. And things like that make me very hopeful. We are not going to get things right all the time, but we have to be willing to learn and address them. I mean, that's really what life is. It's about your perspective growing, knowing more and doing better, rather than knowing more and still insisting that what you know is the only thing.
All goes back to learning again, doesn't it? And being open to receiving that feedback.
Exactly.
And being willing to change.
Right. I really see that as the root of so many struggles that we have right now, whether it's around all of these anti-trans laws or anything really. It's that people in power are unwilling to accept truths that conflict with their beliefs, right? It's like you believe that this thing is wrong and other people are telling you it's not wrong. It's just different. But the people in power refuse to accept that new information. It's troubling, but again, hopeful that there are people who are able to shift and expand. And, Gen Z leaves me encouraged. If they could just get off TikTok. I'm encouraged.
It's true. Because rage without action is just suffering.
Exactly. Now we sound like the old people, but
we are. But it's true. My kids, they're so fired up and they're so angry. And then they just go channel it into their Sims characters.
Yes.
And want me to go make the difference. I'm like, I'm not in this alone. You talk about signals of progress. And certainly when Gordon Bakulis was on this show, if you know her, she's the editorial director for Roadrunners.
Absolutely. Love her.
Love her. Such an amazing woman. She really emphasized something that you emphasize in your book as well, that this idea that running is super accessible and everyone can do it is really just a fallacy. While it is accessible to all, as Catherine talks about in her episode of the show, it's not something that everyone has access to the resources or the community or the support to be able to do. And I think so much of your work was really about opening that up.
Yeah. And, as we're talking and I'm outside and it is a beautiful day, but it's heating up. And I'm thinking, it makes me think about the impact of climate and the impact of capitalism, right? And the idea that running really any sport that's outside, there are already some people who are deeply impacted and can't do the things because of how hot it is, because of the poor air quality. For those of us who are privileged enough to still be able to do the thing we love, I mean, our time is shortening, right? Like the idea, I'm reading stories about folks who are training for the Olympics and we're training through wildfire season and who are training through extreme heat, extreme dryness, or extreme rain, tornadoes. So if we don't stop purely for selfish reasons, right? If we don't start rethinking what all of these obstacles are and what our contributions are to those obstacles, I mean, we're not going to be able to do the things we love, And part of what I talk about in my book also is how I believe that runners and people in movement spaces, we are the most well prepared to be activists. Like we do really difficult stuff for long periods of time. We're really disciplined. We can commit to like short, medium, long-term goals. So we are the best people to galvanize around racial equity, around climate change, around maternal health, any and everything. We are the people. And it's my hope that through my work, folks start to feel inspired and realize just how much power we have when we take collective action.
I'm thinking back to that chapter in the book where the diversity group was forming with the store owners and the resistance that was there. And like, what a compelling counter argument to these people who had so much influence and were so afraid to do hard things.
Yes. Yeah. And I have to say, one of those people, I don't name him, but he knows it's him, Chris Lampencrowell, has become a really good friend of mine. And he's taught me so much. But I know that I've taught him so much too about, he has a lot more endurance than he thought. And he really is capable of, because a lot of it is that when you don't, just like in running, when you don't have the endurance, you can't be successful. And so for a lot of white folks or people with privilege who have never been in situations where there's friction, if you don't have the endurance for that friction, then you give up, say it's impossible, move on with something else, right? So a lot of it is like learning to sit in that place of discomfort and be just recognizing that it's not forever and that there's actually movement happening, even if you sometimes feel stuck.
What a powerful life lesson in all areas of life and all areas of challenge.
Amen.
But you're right. People who've committed to doing hard things have more practice doing that and have built those muscles. And once you build those muscles, you can use them anywhere.
Exactly. Sometimes when I think about running another marathon, I'm like, can I really? I'm like, yes, I've done it before. My body knows. Yes.
So one of my very favorite moments in the book, and like I said, I read the audiobook, so I read a lot while running. And one of the things I've learned about audiobooks that are good in running is that it's really uncomfortable to cry while running. I don't know if you've had experiences of crying while running. It like hurts my throat. Anyway, so I have kind of a negative association with it from crying. But there's that period, there's that moment in the book where you talk about your march to Washington, D.C. and arriving there and talking about hopelessness and finding meaning.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly as I said it, but when I think about these moments, what was powerful for me about the run that I organized from Harlem to DC was that there were so many people at that moment who felt hopeless, powerless, felt like there was no way, felt like they were so divorced from the political process, which again is intentional, right? Like we're made to feel as though we have no power. So that way people in power can continue to do whatever they want. And I'll say this is particularly true at the local level, where oftentimes, I mean, myself included, we feel like, doesn't matter. And those are the people who are building the roads, deciding curriculum at schools, like literally all of the things that impact. Anyway, so there's this sense of hopelessness. And I organized this run that would end at the Women's March because for me, I felt like I had to do something. It did feel like everything was happening around me, but I thought I could use my platform. I could use my ability to galvanize people, to fundraise for Planned Parenthood and allow people to use their bodies as protests. And it was an amazing experience. We ran over 250 miles in a relay. Thousands of people met us along the course. We raised over $150,000 for Planned Parenthood.
So with everything you're doing right now, what are you most excited by?
It's hard to say most, but I will say one thing that I'm very excited about. One thing that I'm very excited about, and that is unique, is this marathon that I mentioned that's coming up, Every Woman's Marathon, that is sold out. Myself, Catherine Switzer, Dina Castor, Des Linden, we're all championing the race and helping to build the experience. And for me, I'm really excited, like I said, to run with all of these other women, but I'm also really excited about what the possibilities mean for the industry, because this race is only a marathon. There's no other distances. And what data is showing is that in most major marathons, women are competing at lower rates than men. But this race is all women and women are signing up for it. So it's not about, and of course, this is just, one race, but it's clear that it's not about the distance. It's about what is the experience going to be like. And there's a lot of intentionality about what this experience is going to be, whether it's the course time limit, to the location, to the kind of opportunities that are at the expo. And that to me is really exciting because it's showing the industry, well, if you center the experience of women and femme, then we'll show up. But if you don't make experiences that we want to be at, we're not coming. And so that to me means the future of running will be one where women and femme, hopefully, our interests and needs will be centered.
It's so exciting. And it's such a full circle moment for Catherine, I'm sure.
Yes.
And the Avon races that she helped to champion.
I mean, I don't know. I have to ask Catherine, like, did you ever think that this was going to be well, no, I think she would say absolutely not. She didn't think this was going to be her life. But to now be on this opportunity, and also that she's, much older, like this is an intergenerational space. And I imagine that she must be so proud.
One of the things that I was really moved by in your book, but also just in the way that you described this race, is how you think about intentional, inclusive communities.
Yes.
If you were to distill some of the most important principles to creating truly intentional and inclusive communities, what would you say?
So something that I heard a long time ago, I don't know where I heard it, but that when you're looking to create a culture in a community, the idea is whether you are intentional or not, a culture is being created. And that really struck me because I thought about situations that I'd been in, whether they were at work, whether they were at things that I did, where it didn't seem like people were actively trying to create a space where people were rude or disinterested or dishonest. But whether intentional or not, those were the norms that were part of that community. And so that to me made me realize, then that means that everything that I do could have a ripple effect. And so what I think is the number one thing when you're looking to build intentional and diverse communities is that you're open to feedback and that you don't have to understand somebody else's lived experience, but you have to believe them and you have to do as much as you can to accommodate them. And accommodate isn't really the right word. That sounds as if it's like a chore. Nikki Hiltz. I don't know if I said their name correctly,
Yes.
but they're the first first non-binary person to compete for the Olympics, and they're running the 1500, I want to say. But they said that often people say, like, I just don't understand. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. And they said, you don't have to understand. You just have to allow me to be me. And that's it, right? So when you're building community, you don't have to understand people, but to be truly inclusive, you have to be able to make accommodations for them. I also think that you need a leadership team. Nothing is done alone. And I try to surround myself with people who are different from me, who look different, who have different lived experiences, who see things differently. And while that means that there's a lot of friction, and oftentimes I'm like, I wish this person would just like be on the same page, it brings in whole new perspectives. And also, it shows that I'm not always right. You know what I mean? That while I think that this thing is the only way to do something, there are other people who have different ways of doing it. So those to me are super important. And then making sure that your values, norms are carried on, right? Like every time somebody shows up to Harlem Run, there's opening words around what our community is about, what sort of the norms are, because you can't assume when new people come into the group, you can't assume that they know what you're about, right? Your norms and values have to be reinforced, not just in spoken ways, but also in ways of how do you post on social media, right? You'll never see me or the communities that I'm a part of post about, people's body size, about how people's PRs, like we want to be intentional that we are inviting people to come move with us and show up as you are. There's no prescription for what that looks like in terms of body shape, in terms of number, and in terms of socioeconomic status, right? So yeah, making sure that your values are then actually clear in other messages that you put out into the world.
It is a co-created experience that you're describing too.
Yes.
When I first met my husband, he was a TV producer at ABC News, and I had joined a Crunch gym on the Upper West Side. And, I was kind of a big girl, and I was like, oh, this will be this place where I learn how to get fit. And because their messaging on all their windows and doors said, everybody is welcome here. And I went in and I felt so shamed and so uncomfortable and so unaccepted. So then I was like, well, I want to cancel. I don't want to be a part of this. And they wouldn't let me cancel. Anyway, so I got to know my husband because it wasn't exactly how we met, but it's how I got to know him. He sent one of his reporters to come and like run alongside me in the park and talk about crunch. So I was on ABC
Oh
News,
my
and they
goodness.
gave me my money back and canceled my subscription.
I mean, that's exactly it. Like, you can't say this is a place for everybody. And then what's on social media is like people with the certain aesthetic of a body. Or you say it's for everybody, and then somebody shows up and the person gets left behind, right? Like, do mistakes happen? Yes. Again, this is where you incorporate feedback.
You're co-creating as a community that fulfillment, and that it's not, because you can't do it all as the leader, as the founder.
Right. Exactly.
But you can agree to that.
Exactly.
So wonderful, so powerful. So wrapping up, our show is an uplifter chain. Every guest is nominated by another guest or a listener as a woman who inspires her. And I wondered if you wanted to nominate anyone for the show.
So I knew this question was coming, and yet still I feel underprepared because I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to say? But I think somebody who's really had an impact on me here in Washington is this woman named Annette Diggs. She's a Black woman, and she's the founder of this organization called Edge Outdoors. And she's all about getting women of color and non-binary and femme into snow sports. So she does snowboarding, skiing, and she's just so passionate about the work that she does, mostly because she didn't grow up having those experiences. And then once she started skiing, it was her life. And so what's really powerful is like, you never know what is for you in this life until you get an opportunity to try it. But if you don't have that opportunity, then you're living your life unfulfilled. So Annette Diggs is incredibly inspiring. She's fun. She's cool. And she is the reason why I now love snow sports.
I can't wait to talk to her. And it's so true to your story, right? That I go back to the see her, be her messaging, right? We can't become anything unless we believe that it's possible. It requires some degree of hope, and that requires some degree of awareness.
Exactly.
Well, Alison, Mariella, Désir, you have certainly done that with your life, and I can't wait to see what you continue to do. And I'm really glad you're raising a kid who is growing up with these values and with this view of what a mother is able to do and the impact she's able to have. I'm so grateful for your time and for you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the Uplifters podcast. If you're getting a boost from these episodes, please share them with the uplifters in your life, and then join us in conversation over at theuplifterspodcast.com. Head over to Spotify, Apple Podcast, or wherever you get your podcast, and follow, and rate our show. It'll really help us connect with more uplifters, and it'll ensure you never miss one of these beautiful stories. Mwah! Big love.
Painted water sunshine with rosemary and thyme. Dwell in the perplexing, though you find it vexing. Toss a star and hover, be your own best lover. Relish in a new prime, plant a tree in springtime. Dance with idle hindsight, bring the sun to twilight. Lift you up, whoa. Lift you up, whoa. Lift you up, whoa. Lift you up. Lift you up, whoa. Lift you up, whoa. Lift you up, whoa. Lift you up.
Beautiful.
I cried. It's that little thing you did with your voice.
Right, in the pre-chorus, right?
I was like,
Mommy,
I had to cry quietly.
Mommy, stop crying. You're disturbing the peace.